Hey everyone, welcome to ALB programming lesson. Getting confused with those lines and lines of code? Struggling to figure out what each line of code actually does? Maybe Breakpoint Debug will help you a lot. This is a code we've been working on since the previous lesson. We know Java program starts from the main function. Then what happens is declaring an object or declaring an instance of course. The instance is named subject. The next line is initializing the instance. These lines are assigning name, classroom to the subject. These lines are displaying the subject information. As we know, Java program executes the code in the main function, line by line. But the execution is super fast. All the code will be executed within a second. Now we're going to learn to observe what is happening at each step. In the previous lesson, we will just run the program, but we'll miss a lot of information this way. So we'll go to debug as Java application. But before doing that, we need to set a breakpoint. In other words, we need to tell Eclipse at which line to pause the program. As we know, Java program starts from the main function. So let's set a breakpoint here at line 4. Make sure the cursor blinks at the line 4. Go to the menu bar and click Run. Then click Toggle Breakpoint. Now you can see a little ball in front of the line 4, the fourth line. Now right click on the source code file. Instead of going Run As, let's go to Debug As. Click Java Application. Then you'll see a pop-up in the way. The pop-up is asking, do you want to open a debugger perspective? It's a user interface that has buttons used for debugging. We definitely need that. So I'll click yes. The user interface has changed. Debugger perspective is turned on. Program starts. Declare the variable. Pause at this line, but has not yet executed this line. We'll be observing this panel a lot and find out some important info regarding the variables listed here. Now we have only this variable, args, which is referring to this. But did you notice that this subject is not on the variable panel? It will after initializing. When this line is executed, the subject will be initialized. To execute this line, click on the Step Over button. This line is executed. Now the program pauses at this line. Look at the variable panel. You can see a newly added variable, subject. This subject is referring to this subject, the same story. When you put your mouse cursor over the text for a few seconds, you will see this thing listing out the information related to the subject. You can see exactly the same information on the variable panel. Click on this little triangle. You can see all these information, such as the attendant, classroom, subject name, and schedule. Here you see the value. Initially it's 0. The null means having nothing, not even an empty thing, like thin air or like the earth in the beginning, which is void. Now let's execute this line and see what will happen. Click the Step Over button. Program is paused at this line. but this line is skipped because computer does not execute the comments. Now this field is highlighted. The subject name has become this, which is the same as here. This is what will happen after executing the line 9, the 9th line. Well, now the program is paused at this line. Let's execute it. Then what will happen is that this field will change. Let's see. Click here. The attendant is highlighted and has become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is identical to this one. Now let's execute the line 12. The program is paused at the line 14, skipping the empty line 13. In the variable panel, the classroom is highlighted. Its value is turned into something from null. Alright, all these name, attendant, classroom, schedule, all these fields are the members of the subject. In the beginning, they don't have any value. No name, no student, no classroom were assigned to the subject. Then this method assigns a name to the subject. This line is just a comment. This method assigns a student. This method assigns a classroom to the subject. We also observed their value change during the debug. This line prints the text in the console. Printing means this print. LN means line. A line of text will be written here. The content of the text is this text, including the blank space, followed by the subject name. Let's execute this line. Look, a line of code is printed out the console. This Java program is the same as this. Well, the program sets the subject name, gets the subject name, prints the subject name at the console. Question: what would you do if you want to print this text? Well, I'm going to stop the debugger. And let's compare this line with this one. And let's compare this line with this one. The difference is a pair of quotation marks enclosing this. Save the file and debug the program. You can right-click anywhere in this white area. Go to Debug As, then click Java Application. Program pauses at this line. Let's execute the program line by line manually. Click Step Over button. Now, if I click Step Over, then there will be a text printed on the console. Let's see. Look at this. Execute line 15. Now look at the difference between these lines. Let's keep executing the rest of the lines. The last line is executed. When you click Step Over button, the program is terminated and the debugging buttons are deactivated. Alright, we've seen how the program is executed from the start to the next line, to the next line, and line by line by line. Well, so far our program is only a few lines of code, So it's not a big deal to do line-by-line debugging. But as you advance in programming and computer knowledge, the amount of the code that you can write and understand will increase. Then you won't have to debug every line. For example, I'm interested only in line 15. I know the result of this line and this line, and I'm sure I'm right. Well, I don't want the program to pause at this line. I don't want to spend time observing variable panels. We can let the program pause at one breakpoint, execute several lines of code, and pause at another breakpoint. Let's set a breakpoint at this line. Let's try to set another breakpoint at the 5th line. Doesn't seem to work. There is an error message. Selection does not contain a field. I have no idea what it means. But anyway, we can learn that not all the lines allow you to set a breakpoint. Let's try line 7. Alright, this works this time. Let's try breakpoint by breakpoint debug. Program pauses at line 7. Click on Resume button here. Then my program executes the line 7 and the 9th line, one after another in a flash, and pause it at line 11. After line 11, there is no breakpoint, so when I resume the program, everything after line 11 will be executed line after line very quickly to the end. What resume button does is to execute several lines of code between two breakpoints. In other words, program can pause at almost any line you want with the help of breakpoint. Now look at this area, full of breakpoints. We can remove them. Go to Run. Here, click Remove All Breakpoints. Then the dialog box is asking me if I'm sure to remove all the breakpoints. Sure, it's not a big deal. It removes all the breakpoints and doesn't affect my program at all. So I'll click Yes. Clear. All the breakpoints are removed now. Now, let's learn another cool stuff about the debugger. Before getting into it, let's set some breakpoints. And start up the debugger. Now, instead of executing an entire line of statements, we can debug a small piece of code within a line. For example, I want to know what this part does. I will copy the expression. Then go to the menu bar, click Window, go to Show View, and click Expression. Then click on Add New Expression button. When the cursor is blinking, type the code or copy and paste the code you want to investigate. If you try to evaluate some random code, you will end up seeing an error like this. But I'm sure what I input is not a random code, and why am I still seeing an error like this? Well, program has declared a variable here, but not yet initialized. I step over, the variable is initialized, and the error is gone. Program stores and looks for information in the memory. As you've learned in the 5th lesson, initialization allocates memory to a variable. Before initialization, there wouldn't be any memory allocated to the variable, so error occurs when the program refers to the memory to look for that variable subject. Now, program is paused at this line, and I want to execute it in these lines. Since I've already set a breakpoint at this line, I can click Resume button, and the program will pause here. Now, the value here has turned into something instead of null. Let's continue experimenting with this expression evaluation tool. Click Add New Expression button and type some random stuff. You end up getting an error. Now, let's evaluate subject. The value is id equal to 30. You don't have to know what it means. Now, let's expand the subject. It contains some data as we've defined. Might have to scroll up and down. It makes it pretty inconvenient. So, double click on the Expression tab. And you can have a broader view. Let's see another subject. I got an error because I didn't define such a variable as another subject. And this data does not exist in the memory. What I defined is subject, not another subject. Now, let's evaluate the entire thing in the parentheses. The value is like this. Let's do it a similar expression. The result, however, is this. By the way, if you're wondering what that plus sign is, I invite you to watch the next lesson. Now our program is paused at this line and has not executed this line and the lines below, but we can try to predict their execution results with the help of expression evaluating tool. The variable panel does the similar stuff, but it shows only the values of the variables. In comparison, expression panel can not only show the values of variables, but also other expressions like method calls, concatenated strings, and even random thing. You get the idea. To summarize this lesson, we learned breakpoint debugging feature of Eclipse IDE. We learned to enter the debug mode. In the debug mode, there are a few buttons up here. We have step over button to do line by line debugging, executing current line and pause at the next line. We also have a resume button that executes the current line and the lines after it and pause at the next breakpoint or terminate the program. We can set breakpoints. Well, because Eclipse doesn't know at which line program needs to pause, in this situation, just click on the editing area at the line you want the program to pause. We can set breakpoints. We can also remove breakpoints. Alright, so much for this lesson. Next lesson, we will learn to deal with numbers and strings with Java programming language. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.